Hey, get this started. This might bit more of a chaotic stream today, I feel. Um, People moving in the house, and also I forgot a chore I need to do. So I will make as much progress as I can. Ads are starting. So let's do that. Okay. So I'm finding with this project, um, I'm seeing the parts. Um, I'm seeing the not fun parts. I'm seeing the parts that are um, why you wouldn't want to do this, right? Sometimes it's easy to listen to people. It's easy to say, oh, don't do this, don't do that, right? But sometimes a bit of experience will help you um, understand why. Um, hey, Little, how you doing? Good morning. Um, and thank you for being in YouTube as well. um, like, I don't I have no doubts about my approach here. I think my approach is the one that works for me. I think it is helping me solve the problems I want to solve, and I think it's doing what I want it to do. That being said, I'm also willing to adapt when necessary, and it's why I've not pushed for building a product that is quick to market. I'm doing good. How about yourself? I see horrible things. Oh, YAML on the screen, GitHub Actions. Um, so I don't necessarily doubt the approach here. What I do question is how much of this can I truly keep in my head? So we have Liquid Sky. Liquid Sky is uh, um, a large project now with many different moving parts. Um, I'm okay. I need to call a customer and say, yeah, I'm late again, but I'm dreading it. Ooh, things just not going the way you want them to go. Uh, is it is it your procrastination or is it the customer's needs? Very much not going the way I want it to go. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, glasses are dirty. Morning, daughter. um, so yeah, I don't doubt the approach that I'm taking is the right one for me. I feel that it is doing the things I want it to do, and it's definitely worked to educate me, which is where I started. And I've got to remember that. I didn't start Liquid Sky with some grand I want to become rich plan. I started Liquid Sky with that. I want to do project management the way that I feel would help developers. And if it turns into a thing, I should keep it that way as if it turns into a thing because it will help drive me forward as it becoming a product. Um, um, so yeah, it's three things: procrastination because of mental health, it's stuff not working the way it should, and it's a customer not getting me the materials I need in time. Yeah, combination of those three things. I've never seen development finish early, to be honest. Doesn't often finish early because we are poor at estimating and setting timescales. Just acceptably late versus unacceptably late. Yeah. Time estimation is a, that's, yeah. We could go on about that for a long time. We are never, ever good at time estimation, either through, okay, I won't say never ever, to no absolutes. If it's very small, we are often more accurate. Um, a good insight was you wanted an educated customer that understands the throes of development. Mm. Yeah, software development is hard, and solving problems is hard, and trying to solve problems in an efficient and um, timely manner often doesn't lead to um, the most uh, optimal of code. Um, so, so with this project, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of challenges still to come. There's a lot of questions as to how does it adapt. Um, One of the focuses of this is to try and make sure that the customer has at least, or rather the in this case the I'm not talking about customer, but the product team, the people developing the requirements have thought through what they want and described what they want. Um, People who can code a little are oftentimes more dangerous because they don't know enough to know the challenges of real software development, but they know enough to understand what software development is and that they can throw something together really quick and get an answer. So people who can code a little are more dangerous. Like PMs that are former developers, um, oftentimes they'll find themselves applying what they know about software development to their expectations of what it is. Now I definitely do not understand that pain. Yeah. So what I've got to try and do today is try and build out the control tower pieces. So there's a flow. Uh, Bring up the diagram. The use case for streaming data. Oh, nice. Nice. So when a new user registers a tenant, right? So a customer comes in, they want to register a new tenant. Yeah, it'd be interesting in hearing the use case. I have yet to see. Yeah. Um, You're typing that. I'm going to continue on. So the customer comes along, they want to register a tenant, right? So that takes them through the step of adding their user, adding their company detail, their address, etc. It then creates a tenant for them. That's great, but we need a subscription for that tenant to be valid because we want to be able to enable subscriptions. We don't want to go into this system without any form of not gatekeeping of uh, gating a user's access to the system based upon data, right? So what now happens is when the tenant gets created, Kafka publishes the tenant, right? We listen to that tenant appearing in the subscriptions component of Control Tower. If we haven't seen that tenant before, we create a default new subscription, which then publishes that. And now this view captures that subscription and says, yep, I got a subscription. We're good. And it aligns with that so that when the user goes to log in, they have a valid subscription and therefore we'll be able to see the system. So it's very much pulling these two parts together through that. Yeah. Setting a large file and streaming change the RAM profile from using gigabytes to 50 meg. And the process speed from 15 minutes to maybe a minute. Nice. Hmm. Gotcha. Nice. In my case, get file from FTP, unzip whole file, go through file structure, get file, deal with file. Use jet range, dot memory, or whatever it's called to make an instantaneous graph. Nice. Yeah, dot memory is nice. So I am going to push this for the development tag, for the development, and try and get some images creating. That's my first challenge for today. So we're going to take, we don't need the gateway in the same way here, do we? This gateway is going to be the same. Oh, nice. All right, I can focus now that I've suitably impressed someone with my database stream. That's very cool. That's a good use case. Stream data coming in from a stream. Nice. Just one of the same as telling the gym trainer. Yeah, people who can appreciate the what's happening. Yeah. So we don't need the gateway in here right this second because the gateway. This is going to be an interesting one actually because we're going to have. It doesn't affect us for this first iteration because we only have subscriptions as a component that's necessary. So this component, both its receiver and its, well, just the receivers technically, are necessary right this second for control tower. But we are going to have to consider what the API means. Yeah. That's going to take some routing fun I think the gateway gets replaced. No, it doesn't. Liquid Sky did not replace the gateway. Infrastructure gateway. Yeah, it still has the gateway because that diverts everything. Yeah. Okay. Rosto, hello. How you doing? Welcome in. Sorry if I'm not paying. I'm trying to. Yeah. What were you doing? I was passing 150K line product register from a supplier. We're outputting audit records into a CSV file that's like a gigabyte or so. DB. Nice. Trash pandas. To a file. Let's see if you end up with something asynchronous on the way you got issues. Synchronous on the way you got issues. Yeah. Doing somehow. How you doing? I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Yeah. I'm talking about today getting the deployment of this project up and running, and this is the first time we're deploying a component of yeah, one line is here. Plumie is an infrastructure as code tool built to allow me to write scripts out to deploy the application. So this project is many different components, right? So we have different databases, different servers, different processes. So Pulumi is a scriptable way of defining that thing. And so I'm able to kind of script out, build the infrastructure, which goes and gets the console system, goes and builds the storage, the SQL Server stuff, Kafka, Before that, I had all the data repeated like 4 or 5. Yeah, we could see it at about the gigabytes of RAM data from RAM, and that was a mess. It looked like nice. Good on code first. Database. Pulumi is the same thing. Yeah. So Pulumi is just a scriptable way of defining how we're going to deploy an application. This is actually going through a Kubernetes box. So this gets all that deployed. Yeah. Well, Terraform is an alternative to Pulumi. Yeah. The irony is I'm using Consul, which is a HashiCorp product. Terraform is from HashiCorp. I'm using Pulumi, which is, yeah. Now, my biggest problem with this is you have to, it's all managed through a, Pulumi is, I'm using TypeScript for Pulumi, which was recommended to me by not Code Sean, um, real life Sean, Napalm, um, because the C# version was apparently not as friendly. But you can build it using C#. I think, yeah, there's a few other languages. Yeah. This is something I haven't done before, so I'm using the excuse to do it. Terraform does seem to be a more common choice, but Terraform also comes with a lot of criticism from people. Um, yeah, you write code, spin things up, and since it's code, you can also, yeah, I can when I'm running this, I can go and pull resources from other places. I can merge data in. So the benefit here is, as I'm building, I don't think storage, build SQL Server. There's a lot of hard coding right this second because again, I'm trying to get my head around just how to do this. But I can put secrets in, so the configuration is built very much for the profile I'm building it for. If I switch my profile to a production, the same deployment scripts can work, but then I just have variables that change. AWS seems like more of a thing. The Azure website is pretty user friendly. Well, even the company I work for, Terraform is the choice for Azure as well. Call out to an API to get the amount of servers to create and start. Yeah, I mean, you could configure it. You could actually have a configuration site that said, okay, how many of these we want to do, whatever, and pull all that in. Is haven't done the only correct way to say it. Didn't do incorrectly, completely in this case. You talking from an English language structure? Um, I didn't do before. Yeah, it's fine. I haven't done, didn't do. Perfectly understandable. I have the dumbest reason to use Azure over AWS. The AWS interface is a cluster and Azure feels somewhat easier. Uh, yeah. People would understand regardless, but yeah, I haven't done this before is the way I would put it. Um, um, I think I say I know of Next.js, but I don't use it regularly. I'm not familiar with it. Yeah. Some people would call the Azure UI a cluster too, and honestly, I haven't looked at GCP at all. GCP is, I was frustrated when I was doing the developers at stream stuff last week. I went into, you have to go into the Google portal, right? And I created a secret, and it's right there on screen. They don't hide it. They don't remove it from you. They don't say, okay, well, you want a new secret, you need to generate it again. They just show it right there on the screen. And I was almost ready to drag the window over to the browser to show, oh, look, I've set up my, yeah. Holy crap, we hit 100 messages real quick today. No one uses GCP, I believe. I think 80% of the market is AWS, 18 Azure, and 2% on GCP. All it takes is you know, one good product to shift that. AWS is, I think from a development perspective, AWS is much harder to use as a .NET developer. Having gone through trying to build AWS stuff, it's very confusing whether they use .NET 8 in certain things and .NET 6 in certain things, the toolings behind. Yeah. Like they're only just releasing some pieces like the last couple of weeks that I'm trying to use, yeah, for .NET 9. GCP docs, what's included in the free tier, really impressive. 28 hours per day of F1 instances. Yeah. Yeah. I don't like chats if I'm engaged. Yeah. Yeah. That's fine. I'm appreciating it. So to transition to minimal API for newer projects, do you still use controls? Not sure which one I prefer yet. Hi, Sally. I don't like minimal API. I well, I say I don't like minimal API. Minimal API, if you're getting something up and running real quick, absolutely fine. But it becomes a mess, and then you have to layer stuff on top to clean it up, right? So if your project speeds up, then the minimal API becomes a lot more. Yeah, you have to put everything in extension methods. So what I'm using in this project is fast endpoints. Fast endpoints sits on top of minimal API, but then gives me the ability to just have a class to represent the thing that I'm doing. So it's all the benefits of minimal API without having to deal with that configuration stuff and trying to put extension methods and stuff in there because it just, yeah. The moment I saw minimal API, I'm like, that's great if you're just testing something, but people are going to start writing. So it kind of, to me, it defeats the purpose. Now, minimal API was a rewrite. It was not an extension of API controls and stuff. So it's a brand new piece. So yeah. Um, the API endpoint should check technical validation, calling out to the facade and mapping the return to an HTTP return code. Yeah. So fast endpoints, but yeah, fast endpoints is built on top of minimal API. Figuring out if we're using sending 200, 201, the facade would return an object, void or null for those three. Like if there are an error, should know to return a 500 with a meaningful error message. No, I prefer fast endpoints. This is a way, it's kind of fortuitous. This style, I was trying to figure out writing my own versions. I've hated controllers for a long time. I don't like, so controllers and services, they become a risk for aligning our thought of what the database is into our code. So they become dumping grounds for, well, it's kind of this behavior, so we'll put it in there. So like if I created a planning controller, right, then I might have an initiatives endpoint, or I might have planning items endpoint, I might put requirements endpoints in there, or I might create a requirements controller, right? So developers can flip-flop very easily and put a method in a larger controller. So I maybe that's my experience with how people have used controllers, and again, service is the same. We end up with like a planning service, and then because we align that to the actual database object in some way, shape, or form, and they become kind of tied together. So this is why I like the way I do this. I'm in a forum and we're arguing about dependency injection of files or databases into classes. I'm on the dependency injection is good side. It has two huge upsides: platform switching and testing. The problem is once you inject a database into a class, anything that uses the class needs a database type thing. Once you get to databases and or files, you end up with the need to abstract, which then creates abstractions around things that have abstractions, and it can kind of get see, I don't mind that sort of stuff because I think it increases readability, and I prefer readability. Even if there's a little bit of hidden magic, I kind of prefer the readability over everything else. Show me what it's doing, the core of the logic. Don't show me why, don't show me the technical implementation stuff. I would talk about repositories, and one point is we used to put everything in the SQL Server, data, tables, files, blob fields, etc. These days we have so many alternatives. Use repos to pick the right service for the right job. Yeah. OOP is just a series of partially applied functions chained together. Well, not the way it was envisioned, but it is these days. The way we write .NET code these days is not a lot of object orientation. There is some aspects of it, but not. We are utilizing uh, some aspects, but not really. We're not modeling things with OOP. Also do a quick demo of migrating from a platform, switch out the implementation in prod, build a tool that spins up both versions of the repo, and do get all safe. Attachments. So attachments, when I'm running it locally, it uses local file system. When it's deployed, it uses Azure. It's just a swap out of that. I mean, in this case, it is actually I think a flag. Add storage, yeah. Yeah, right now I'm using a configuration based upon what I want to switch out, but the API is the same. I think the key to repositories is that it encapsulates all things database. What ones it doesn't have to be a database, and the coupling between the repository and whatever it uses doesn't communicate any database type thing. So, well, actually, no, not totally Delta. So, if you look at my changes stuff here, right? So changes, when I'm let me figure out. So changes uses a repository, and it uses the same repositories I use everywhere else. It just gets a document, it gets an object and uses it. This repository is actually backed by Mongo, whereas the same code is readable in, let's say that, in something like this, where I'm using a repository. No, of course, I'm finding more complicated examples. I'm using a repository and using specs. So the same pattern applies. Now, I can swap that out with SQL Server. The code behavior. That's what I'm saying. Sometimes abstractions help you because they allow you to do that sort of stuff, but also keep the implementation, the technical implementation away. You might use a SQL Server in the beginning, but then say document DB makes more sense. One of the Spring Framework devs in our book club, we actually agree that swapping out database. So swapping out a full database, swapping out your main application database, I agree. You are rarely going to swap it out entirely for something else. That being said, the way that microservices work, that's more likely than ever. So I'm kind of in between both you and Thindle. I agree and disagree at the same time. You might start with SQL, but figure out vector is better or not. You might move from using a local file system and get started and move over to a blob store when you get close to prod. Well, again, this uses local storage, local storage for running development and Azure for running in prod. But you're not likely to do that on fly. But the ability to, again, the ability to change that, have that decision, and not have to change your actual code is useful. Again, I did it with an item early on. Originally, one of these was using, I think it was actually tickets. Tickets actually used Couchbase to begin with, but then I realized it wouldn't work and moved it over to SQL, and the code remained pretty much intact, but the underpinnings changed. The dependency argument was actually supposed to be about hidden dependencies and how they are hard to test. I think you just missed the word hidden. Yeah. Use effect in React is a good example of a hidden dependency can arise without realizing it. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Um, so purpose of stream is what I need to do is I need to get the relevant pieces deployed. So we're going to take a receivers line. We're going to take that. Actually, I want to take that entire file and go to control tower. Paste that there. And this is going to be subscriptions receivers. This is going to be subscriptions infrastructure. So if any of these things change, then this piece would be rebuilt. Right now, we're going to do development. Actually, oh yeah, run unit tests. We don't have any unit tests in here, so that's fine. The concept there is basically that this should only trigger when unit tests have been completed in those scenarios. So we shouldn't be building and deploying Docker images if our tests have failed. So this is going to be module, is going to be subscriptions receivers, and that's going to be subscriptions infrastructure receivers. So that's going to build that project, and it's going to call it subscriptions receivers, which then becomes CT-subscriptions receivers when it deploys. That's fine. That's fine. Secrets inherit. So let's commit these. Did I commit that? No. Push image, create image version with push image from Liquid Sky workflows. Commit that. Receivers workflow for subscriptions. Again, right now I want this to go into development, so I want this to, yeah. $110 rebate for carbon tax. No wonder that program wasn't very popular. Okay, so I'm going to push this. Now I know this is against development, but right now I don't have a lot of choice. 110 is better than nothing, right? I don't have a lot of choice on this one. To test this is going to be a challenge. One in Apex, by the way. And sorry, I missed your hello right in the middle of that chat. So, because the prompter doesn't color the text, so if it's moving fast, it's hard to keep track of. Gas was 20 cents more expensive. That's perfectly fine. Chatting is good. People are more than welcome to chat. And yeah. As always, that is kind of the big benefits of streaming. Being able to talk about what we do. Okay, so all I'm deploying from this part is this receivers piece. It's all I need from control tower. So again, when we create a new tenant, so when I open this up to everybody, when this new version goes live, which I was hoping would be done by now, but a bit behind. When you create a new tenant in the system, it needs to give you a subscription. If you don't have a subscription, it won't let you. You can log in, but it's going to take you straight to a screen that says subscriptions works, because there's no content to it yet. That's just a mechanism because we've solved the problem of when Liquid Sky, when we put the first version live, the problem was if you signed in, you had to let me know because I had to go and set up permissions and I had to do other things to get your account activated. Now, when you sign in or register, create a new tenant, etc., it will require a subscription to exist. You do the payment process out of band from the application. Yes, the payment process would live uh, partially in the control tower piece. So yeah, yeah, potentially, yeah. Yeah, but payment management would end up in control tower anyway. So the idea would be that no financial information lives in the actual public facing component application stack at all. So even if we put a screen in for capturing payment information, that would go into the control tower anyway. So management of subscriptions lives in control tower. That's the concept. There is no, so it's quite common when you're building a system. Oh, I need to manage this. I need to manage this, and you kind of put in a a version of the system or a set of methods and behaviors into your main application to handle those administrative pieces. Once the application grows quite large, that piece can become quite risky because it has a lot of overlap with, it has potentially a lot of overlap with the way that the customers are using the software, but enough differences that it's kind of very custom. So what I wanted to do from the start here was not have any of the system administrative pieces sat in the actual source code. So Control Tower lives completely separate from Liquid Sky, and Liquid Sky is only that's like Kafka, right? So Control Tower publishes the subscription. So when we create the tenant, when it receives tenant created, it will create a default subscription, right? So this is one of the more complicated flows so far. So we get update tenant. So update tenant because we're not using eventing in true, like we're not using eventing, we're using state transfer in Kafka, right? So there's no need for events at this point because it's just data. Pieces need that data. So I don't want to publish tenant was created, tenant was updated, etc., because it doesn't have any value to the system. If later on there is a need to introduce some sort of reactive components to events happening in the system, we'll use mass transit and RabbitMQ for those pieces, and they can still be published alongside with the data publishing, right? There's nothing saying that I can't do both. But anyway, right now, update tenant. This occurs when we receive a tenant integration event, right? So we call update tenant. In this instance, do we have the tenant? Yes, we do. Okay, we're done. We don't need to do anything else. We have nothing more to do with that tenant from the subscriptions perspective. We create a tenant, and there we go. We're done. From the receiver's perspective, that's actually done. What that does is trigger a tenant created event internally. And tenant created, so the way to read this is, so tenant created event subscriber, this is the action we're going to do. We're going to create a default subscription. So we get that notification and we send a create default subscription command. That will go here, and we've got a create default subscription. That will first get the tenant, right, which we've just created. It will then test to see if there's a subscription existing for that tenant. And now we create a subscription, and that part's done, right? So we are just creating the subscription, but everything's reacting to other events. So now that will also create a subscription created event, which will then publish an integration message for subscription. So now we'll publish a subscription. So the larger system sees a subscription. On this side over here, we have a view that's listening for subscriptions. So when a subscription event comes in, it creates it in the database. And now when you log in, it says, do I have a valid subscription? Yes, you do. And there we go. Does each customer get their own database, etc.? Not at this point. Right now, it's multi-tenancy in each database, which is more than sufficient for testing. The on-prem solution, or rather the individual solution for this, would be a little bit more complicated. But that can be tackled later. And regarding dependent bot, not a lot. I know there's some stuff I want to do. There are some PRs already been suggested by dependent bot, I think, on one or two of these projects. So right now we don't need to build architecture, but again, like you just said, we could react to that and build out things if we wanted to. Yeah, the above would be more expensive, but has interesting application for on-prem. On-prem would not be really a supported solution. However, we do, there is the concept of, large customers would not necessarily, you don't want a larger customer to slow down the performance of the application. There are solutions for that at the database level, at the repository level, pulling out different connection, different database based upon tenant. There's a few things that I also want to look at there, because then you'd have individual databases at each level. So the infrastructure would have to scale, but not impossible. But your code base will eventually become obsolete. I don't think obsolete. I'm not sure I agree with obsolete. Having the ability to do on-prem these days is not really desirable. And this system is so complicated, I wouldn't want to deploy this on-prem. But having hi Beden, Beden RG. Is there any way to replay events? How do you handle a system going up and corrupting the state? Yeah. The afternoon rambler geek. Yes. So I have been building tools so individual systems have a source of truth, right? So this database is the planning source of truth. So backups of all these, automated backups of all these, because I'm using it for state transfer, not for eventing right this second. Right now, the events don't really matter to me. Ultimately, they will. That'll be a problem I solve at that time. But right now, I'm using it for state transfer. So essentially, if the system goes down or I want to build a new part of the system, I am building the tools to export the data and re-import the data into an individual piece. So if the view gets corrupted in that instance, there's a tool that will actually allow me to say, oh, get all the planning data and pull it in and create it into these tables, and the same for tasks and attachments. So I'm able to build a system image, a script that allows me to re-import that data. It's a very important piece of doing this system this way, because you distribute the data. So this is completely discardable, right? If I want to build a search system though later on, how do I do that? How do I tackle building a search system? Well, I can't just restream all the events. That's not practical. What I can do is gather the current state and populate a database in the background off of the events, and then it'll play catch up later on once I enable the eventing. So I only need to get to a point in time that's current, and then it will continue on with the events. So I just need to build the receivers for that thing. Yeah, there's not a lot of so deeper answer there. When those messages internally, so I was just going through this process, right, of this happening, this event happening, this event happening. These events are stored in an outbox. These aren't actually processed. So when I get here and this gets queued, this tenant created event here gets queued, that is actually stored in an outbox. So that tenant created gets queued there. That's processed. If that fails, it has retries. It does have a dead letter queue. Once it goes to publish to Kafka, it goes to an outbox. So if I need to replay the events for these, yes, I can do. I can replay events recently. Right now, there's no cap on this, but obviously that will be something I need to keep a track on. Have you got experience of that? I'll say BDN. Is that something that you've experienced before, and how have you solved that? Um, Search is interesting. Would you plug it into the aggregates or just have it as a standalone service? Standalone, standalone, so it can be backed and processed. So if we introduce search, whatever technology for search, would go here. It'd have its own database. It would pull events or state transfer events. So I'm using these as data state rather than actually, tenant was created. They do carry with it the source event, but yeah. But yeah, I'd introduce search as its own component, and then in the API, the client would just use search as a new API endpoint, and it would have no idea that it wasn't part of the other parts. Yeah, it is a common problem with event source select systems. I just usually hate all the boilerplate that all this introduces. Boilerplate from... So this was this project started as an experiment in, can I do this and learn the lessons along the way that you don't get to always learn in real time. I haven't had that opportunity fully in my professional career. I do feel this fits well for me. It allows me to break up the code. It allows me to rearrange the code if I need to. I can combine or condense or extract these components, as I'm referring to them, the planning, the tasks, etc., as need. They don't really have any solid attachment to the projects they're in, just more of a load perspective. Yeah. I feel like the solution to that is idempotency, but that's not easy to implement. Well, idempotency from this perspective, I know what I've got, I know what I need, I have the dates, I have the things, so yeah, I can deal with, have I seen this before? Yeah, 100%. I'm not bashing the project, would you? Yeah, yeah. Sorry if I came across as defensive there. I'm just wondering. I'm genuinely curious to see, because there have been some people that come in and said, I don't like this way of doing things, and left. And I think that the only way of understanding if I'm, because I've been doing this for 25 years as a software developer, not distributed systems as a software developer. I have worked on distributed systems. I've built some distributed systems, but I've never taken them to this length in production. So a lot of this is very much an exercise in growth. So I'm always interested in hearing people's experiences and testing my own understanding and testing my own, how would I deal with this thing, right? It's worth doing. Something like read the current state of the system, event specifies the future state, apply the event to reach the future state. Right. So right now, if I publish a Kafka message, right. So again, right now these are state transfer. These are not events. These are not, tenant was created, requirement was added, requirement was updated, etc. These are, here's this object, by the way. So you do what you want with it, right? There will be a need in the larger system for more events, for more event-driven decisions, but that's not now, right? Now is how do I get the data into each piece to make its decisions? That's all I care about, right? Like changes pulls the messages in. It says, what did it look like before? Is the date on it different than what was there? So it will get the planning item. It'll say, okay, have I seen this before? Right. this last update happened. That should pull from the last update of the record, not from the. So even if I was to publish the event again, the Kafka message again, the changes system is going to check this anyway and say, nope, I've seen this before, or this is older than what I've got. I don't need to do anything. If it sees that and it's in the future, it compares the object and publishes that state. So event specifies future state, could either be cab delivered patron or something else, I guess. Cab delivery en route. Event specifies the future state. Event specifies the thing that happened. It doesn't specify anything to do with future state. It's future state if you haven't processed that yet, right? So it's the what is it now? So I'm using this for state transfer because I feel this works better for me for Kafka. Kafka gives me the robustness and the ability to just, if I spool up a new system, it will immediately get the last 2 weeks worth of events, right? It will populate that data if I start it up. So again, when we come to ETL and stuff, right, there is effort necessary to build the right tools to say, okay, well, this system's gone down to BD's point, right? I'm going to keep shortening that. There's got to be effort involved in making sure that if the state of the system gets out of whack, that I can correct the state of the system overall, because it's not perfect. It's not, Kafka's very resilient, but it's not perfect. The first is an event that happened. The second is so if you're using eventing like that, I think that the order of the events has to be correct as well, right? So if you get a patron in cab before you get, or you get patron delivered before you get patron in cab, then that event doesn't make sense. So you've got, and that's kind of why I didn't go with using system like eventing to describe the system here, like tenant created or whatever, because they can go out of whack, they can go out of line. You could have a system that doesn't produce the right event in the right order, which means that the consumer of that event has a decision to make. How does it store that temporarily? I don't want to get into the, so that's why on the view side, there's a lot of effort put into acquire, right? So acquire is create if not exists. It's, I need an ID. This data needs to be there, but if it's not there, I can't stop and wait, right? In the case of the eventing, if you get a patron delivered before you get a patron in cab event, what do? How do you deal with that event order? How do you hope that it can't happen? There's all manner of different reasons why it might get there out of sequence. So you have to correct for that. So what I'm trying to do is not, well, do you assume it? Because I assume the patron in cab has a pickup point. My understanding is you have to read the current state of the DB to understand the event. It's basically, if you're using the events to set the current state of the DB, though, how do you know? You can't I think, again, one of the challenges of developing this system is figuring out some of those things along the way, figuring out those lessons like, that's that's how that technology works. So that's why this is a problem. Now I see it. Now I can solve for it. Now I can appreciate it a bit more. But yeah, out of sequence events, they can happen. So what do you do? So if you get cab delivered, if you get a patron delivered, but you never receive the patron in cab, Your database doesn't tell you you've got a customer in the cab if you're distributing it. I run into this in certain test data into DB, and I handle it by doing two separate operations depending on the current state. So you self-correcting the data because you're missing something. So that sort of stuff is now those rules are kind of implied. So why do you need the event in the first place if you can just send just build the data anyway? But anyway, yeah, I think when patron in cab arrives after patron delivered, the end state has to be patron delivered. Well, I think to BD's point, the things go wonky, right? Things don't always go smoothly, especially when you're deploying data across many components and you have eventing going on. How do you solve for that, right? My solution hasn't been tested yet. It's not been, it hasn't been battle tested. I think we actually got the changes up and running again because we actually were able to use the ETL tool to populate data into the MongoDB, right? But the ETL tool needs significant work on its own. That needs a lot of energy put into it. How do we describe the system? How do we publish stuff? But yeah. So anyway, that event that we're talking about before, the subscription created, then results in a subscription being published to Kafka, and that is picked up by the view, which now means your account is in line, and that's there. Now, the reason we're getting that piece in there is because as we release this next version, and I want more people to test it, I'm opening it up. I'm encouraging people to log in and test it. Obviously, not everyone is going to be testing it. We could end up with problems from that, right? So I want the ability to delete the subscription and have you unable to create any more data through the UI. If it gets worse, I shut the bots down. No harm, no foul. But that is the purpose. If anyone's in the stream, you have any more questions, thoughts, opinions on what I'm doing, you're more than welcome to join in. Right now, obviously the chat has been awesome this morning already. Right now, I'm focused on trying to get this latest version. We've been building this. So I've been building this project since late 2023. There's one release out there, which was for subscribers of the stream only. And now this next version, I will open it up with the new features. So now it has estimation and initiatives in there and assignment. So you can assign a task to a user. So it is a little bit more rich than the previous version was. So this is what the current version looks like. And Liquid Sky is not its final name. It is a code name intended to prevent me from worrying too much about what it's called before I actually have a product. So the current version looks like this, and we are actually using it to dog food, building the application. So samples print, prepare for next release. So yeah, so we've done a lot of changes since the last version. Okay. So what I need to do, I can't remember whether I need to set some of this stuff up beforehand or whether I need to. So what happens is when I push these libraries and I've set the things up, I actually do push images to Docker Hub. Um, so this would push an image to Docker Hub for the receiver. Then I need to go in here and configure what control tower looks like. Ultimately, I think we'll do that and have subscriptions, receivers. Did I call it subscriptions? Yeah, subscriptions, receivers. So we'll end up with a structure like that. So we'll end up with control tower being separate. Ultimately, you know, I want to be able to configure, hey, I want to turn, I'd love to figure out in Pulumi how I can turn off certain pieces and turn on certain pieces. That would be fantastic because that would allow me to configure the script a little bit more. But right now, all I've got working is, you know, kind of all or nothing. Sign in. Private. Now, a lot of this, once it's working, I don't think there's a massive problem with ongoing changes because the process will work. Now, what I do need to be able to figure out is how do I gate a release behind an image tag? Right now, it'll move everything to the latest tag. It does increment them, but I don't know how to say only deploy version 2 or, you know, not latest all the time. So I've got to learn a little bit more around that piece as I go because that's a challenge. Okay, let's push this and see if it actually produces anything. Again, no unit tests in this piece. Let's see. Push control tower. So this entire project is now many repositories, right? So control tower is its own component of the system, right? The client for control tower, last night we made the decision to make that a separate project so that we can decouple any changes to those things and have and not delay release if we have a challenge with one piece over another. Liquid Sky itself, the platform is one repo, and the client is its own repo. The foundational components, the shared kernel that lives between both Liquid Sky and Control Tower, is its own repo. So that's 5 repositories alone just for deploying, just for this thing. So distributed in more ways than one. Ow! What are you doing, dog? Hello. Hello, bud. You come in saying hello? You come in saying hello? Yeah? Hello, my friend. You want the microphone? Hello. Hey, buddy. Whoa. Big yawns. What's up? What's up? You okay? I'll be right back. Okay. I'm back for a moment. Oh dear. Create receivers. Why did you fail? Okay, you failed because you don't have the right token stuff. That makes sense. That's what I was forgetting. So that is going to require. What does that require? So right now, what I'm trying to figure out is I have two pieces. Actually, three pieces. I have a repository secret. That is for the workflow to allow me to pull foundation. That's what that was actually failing on. Then I have value for Docker. So obviously I'm not doing them on screen. Yeah, that's going to be a challenge. New repository secret. So I apologize for, I'm going to put this diagram up. I apologize for this, but I have not much choice in this. Actually, let's just make sure that uses ls workflow pat. So we're going to name that something different because I don't have, I'm not using the same access token to do, yeah, that. Let's get it in place first before I worry too much about that. So that comes from, I think, my profile. So I'm not putting up a blurry screen. I'm not doing that. I realize that. I am doing it off to the side on a different screen. Obviously, it comes with some risks because I could end up sharing something I don't by dragging it over. But we'll take that risk right a second. Come on. Okay. Access on. Oh no, I did have the. App for using to pull foundation from Liquid Sky. Regenerate token. So what I've done is I've just gone and changed that token in both places. Or rather, I've changed it globally, so it's totally different. But it does provide control tower access, so that's fine. This is where I get messy. So this is, as a software developer, this part is really not very engaging. I get that. Right. But it is a component of what we do. Right. If you want to build your own software to like outside of your work environment where there are people, maybe there are people to do this sort of stuff for you. These are the lessons that are worth learning and understanding. Even if I don't do this right, I have a reference for what it takes to deploy an application. So this is going to deploy to Kubernetes. This is already deployed. So you can see here, this is what's currently deployed there. Ignore Argo. That was an experiment and I shouldn't have done it on that machine, but that's fine. But these services are deployed and running inside of this little Kubernetes machine. But understanding what that takes, even if I do it wrong, is what I need to be doing. I'll be right back. I need to let dogs back in. I'll be 1 minute. Okay, so apologies for that again. So I set up the workflow part. I now need to go into Docker and set profile. I need to figure out what that looks like. Account settings. Yeah, here we go. Personal access tokens. Does it give me the token? Of course it does not give me the token. That would be silly. So Pulumi has a token. Apparently last used in November of last year. So I have taken a long time to get around to this version. This has been 6 months in the making to get here. Not exactly where I want it to be. We're going to generate a new token, and that's going to be GHCT access. Read and write. Okay. So we're going to take that. And again, I apologize for Pulumi. I have been summoned. Morning, Mr. Anahorn. How are you doing? Docker environment. Why is that an environment? An environment secret, an environment secrets. Okay. Docker user. Push. How do I do this then? It's running a script to normalize 1.6 million phone numbers in a database. Ooh, joy. That sounds like something I don't want to do. Docker user, Docker password. Oh, so what's the push then? I thought is the push dh push. Do I use dh push at all? Or is the password the same as the token? Let's set that. Dh password, Docker password, Docker user, Docker password. I think use the pat as the password. Let's try that. Update to use what I do, what I change here. CT workflow token. I suppose it means if you get, you know, access to one, you don't get access to both. Let's do this. Harish, good day. How are you doing? Okay, so that's gonna fail. Let's see. Oh, it did. It checked it out. Okay, so that's working at least. So what I'm looking for this to do now is build the application, and there we go. It failed to build. Specify a project or solution file. Ooh, guys. Okay, ads are going to start shortly. I apologize. It does help people get into the stream without pre-rolls. So that failed. So that failed because specify. So check out foundation. It's fascinating. Okay. Check out control tower. TBD develop control tower. Control tower source. Should be almost identical. What are we building? We are building, so Liquid Sky as a platform consists of two major components. So the client, which is all the stuff you normally see me developing, and the backend pieces which are starting to take shape, named Control Tower. So what we're working on right this second is getting the Control Tower pieces built to at least complete the subscription cycle. So when you sign up for the application, when you go to the registration page, the you'll be you go through that subscription setup, and it will create a subscription once it sees your new tenant here, and then publishes that. So once you all the data is collected, it will be valid. The idea that subscriptions would control access to the application. So if we delete the subscription, you can't access. You just get redirected to a single page that says subscriptions are working, and that's it. That's all you'd see. And that allows me to publish this next version with a little bit of control, a quick control on if someone's being malicious or doing something that I don't feel is good. I can just delete the subscription and then worry about deleting them and stuff. But they can then no longer create data. Um, it will actually validate that on refresh of the token. So every 3 minutes or whatever it would be checked. So I'm trying to figure out why the second is. Why did that fail? .NET put source inputs from inputs. So what am I expecting there? So the problem there came from this piece. It should have gone subscriptions, receivers, infrastructure receivers. Is that not in source? Please tell me that's not in. Yeah, it should have built that part out. Control tower. So the point of that is this image base. This is a reusable component in the workflow. So this gets used by everything, and it allows us to. So we have module is a string, and from is there. So we do from or module. So we take the from. The idea being that we take that. As the inputs module, yeah, build, and then the outputs what we put as module. So module is, I don't want to have infrastructure in that word, so we build it out that way. Okay, so then so it's failing here, and it's failing because it says it can't. Yeah, there's no path there, so it didn't feed it through. Back to publish. Build and publish Docker image, subscriptions receiver. Why is it doing build and publish Docker image? Why is it not running this one? Why is this one running? It shouldn't actually do this one. On push, jobs build. What have I messed up here? Hi, Canny. How you doing? So, plans receiver. So push image base. How do I ignore making CICD stuff? Ah, you too. Yeah. Let's have a look. Let's go over here. Yes. How do I? So what I'm looking to do here is Loki. What is it today with you? Hello, bud. Hello. Hello. How are you doing? You had some breakfast? Did you have some breakfast and some drink? Okay. So that's kind of scary. Input. So hold on. Hold on. It's because I have that. I don't need that. that's what I was adding. Okay, so yeah, because then this calls that workflow, uses that workflow. Okay, yeah, there we go. Okay. Remove trigger for build. Um, okay, so let's do that. So I must have the same thing in this one. Remove trigger from build uh, base image. I'm not messing around with doing that as a separate commit. It's just not worth the separate commit. Okay, let's have a look now. So now this one doesn't want to run anything. So it didn't. So we pushed that change, right? I did push that change, right? I'm not going crazy. Yeah. And yeah, remove trigger for build base images not build. So now we have no action because this doesn't do anything. Well, this doesn't run. So why doesn't this run now? Oh, I know why. I know why. Can I trigger it manually? Hey, stop, you two. So I can't. Mm. So the problem is one of nothing has changed in the subscriptions to trigger the workflow to make that happen. So let's go over here. I can make something happen. I know that. I just don't want to. Subscriptions, create default subscription. No, so this one. This is on push. So this workflow is on push, but it uses the build and push, which is a workflow call, right? So that's what that should do, right? So I need to change something in one of these directories to make this fire. Give it a reason to actually execute for the first time. It actually did what it should have done. It said, okay, only something in this directory changes. I don't want these to fire all the time because they're going to push a Docker image. So I only want them to change when something about their code has changed. So I need to make a change in here, right? That's put on workflow dispatch. Loki, you are being a pain in the bottom. What is the matter? What's the matter, bud? Hello. Hello. Um, do I just add um, is that it just on workflow dispatch? So I'll go here. Define inputs. Okay. Does that work? Let's see. Um, oh, there we go. So okay, so now I can build it off that. Okay, nice. But that'll still trigger when I make changes. Run workflow. There we go. You can also get really fancy and add inputs where you can provide text. Like, nice. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. What? I say that looked rather advanced for where that was actually getting to. It's like deploying to Docker. No, it's not. There we go. So that's now it's building the project. Subscriptions, infrastructure, receivers. That's the project it should be building. It should be restoring everything it needs, including being able to pull foundation, because we have to check out foundation as part of this. Publishing. Oh no. Close, but no cigar. Process complete. No such image subscriptions receivers latest. What did I mess up here? So the idea is that what we do is we take this project and we build a folder called subscriptions receivers. We then create the container repository of subscriptions receivers. That means I can get rid of the infrastructure word. It doesn't matter. It's useless. We're logged into Docker, and then we're going to take the latest and tag that. But it's saying that it didn't have this. No such image. So did this fail? Let's go to Liquid Sky. What are you chewing? Dog. Is there anything you won't try and chew? Okay. Oof, not going well. Uh, this is because the development branch. I've taken these errors away since, but this was because the development branch was trying to push, and that branch is not allowed to push to the Docker piece. So that's why that. So okay, so this. I want to see the history. Ah, the logs have expired and no longer available. Well, that's not going to help me very much, is it? So this needs cleaning up, but again, you know, time. When do you find the time to do a lot of this? So I suppose what I could do is take this command and run this locally and see what it does. PowerShell, that's that. cd dev prototypes. Project next. Next. Control tower. Actually, um, actually from here. So it's from this level. That built an image, I would bet. No, it did not build an image. Should that not have built an image? That should have built something. Did I just... Container repository subscriptions receivers. As far as I'm aware, that should have built an image for me. But that did not build an image, did it? Why is that not doing what I expected it to do? Oh, dog. Huh. Ava, don't you start as well? This is because people are in the house this week because of Easter break. So people are moving around. So the dogs are a little bit more disturbed than they normally would be. They've kind of fallen into the habit of the stream 2 hours. So, So what this should be doing is building an image. And as far as I remember, this would publish an image called subscriptions receivers to Docker, which would then allow me to see that image there, but I'm not seeing it. Refresh, hold on. Nope. Refresh 3 seconds ago. I still didn't get there. Oh, so that's the Docker Hub thing. That's fine. That's the actual published Docker Hub. No, it builds the directory and it knows there's a project there. This is the same script that we've been using for everything. So as far as I'm aware, no. You just give it a directory, it'll pick up the CS proj. If it'll pick up a solution or a CS proj. Obviously, I don't want to publish this solution, but yeah, it'll deal with it. Let's deal with this. Source, control tower, source. Oh, hold on. Source. Oh, that's the client app. Yeah, okay. Source control tower, subscription infrastructure receivers, bin, delete. Bin release mode, subscriptions receivers. I didn't cache anything there, but .NET 9, .NET 64. So it's built the application. Asterisk, hello, how you doing? What are we deploying and how? Now we are deploying very little. Yes, so Pulumi is what I will be using as soon as I've validated these images build. Using Pulumi to deploy this application. All right. Actually, this is the piece I'm focused on right now, but using Pulumi to deploy the latest version of this application. So there's a lot going on. Right now, I'm wondering why it's not. A lot of DevOps source like someone's going full enterprise. Yeah. Um, yeah. So part of the fun, I suppose. Not my usual wheelhouse, the deployment piece, but it is a necessary piece to do this. So I got the deployment of this is going to this Kubernetes box. So the existing application is up and running. In this is the project I'm actually building, a project management and planning application. Yeah. So pushing using Pulumi. Dogs are going to drive me crazy today. Hey, hey, I can get a cookie if you be quiet for just 5 more minutes. How's that sound? Put it in your head. There you go. So yeah, just experimenting with Pulumi, learning some of these lessons. This application is not something I want to put into the cloud right now. It's too big, and there's no way I can afford to run something like this in the cloud. So having Kubernetes boxes right now makes sense for the development and testing. So this is Liquid Sky, as it's codenamed, a project management and planning application, using a lot of the technologies that I've used over the past 15 or so years or more. Yeah, a new Jira. Focused on planning being separate from development, right? So the the actual work getting done is not the same as the planning being done. So the concept is one of the planning, the product team build out a plan. They they outline what their requirements of that thing are, and then the developers are able to task these requirements. So from a product team perspective, they can see the actual things they want to see, but how they relate to the development and the progress of the development. So everyone can see the thing in the perspective they need. Integration with popular platforms. As of yet, I have no idea. This is a solo development that's been done over the past. MCP server would be useful as well. Um, MCP server, is that the thing? Is that what I think it is? Yeah, model context protocol. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, the concept is one of disconnecting product and development, so that product can focus on product, development can focus on development, but there is a joined visibility, so that everyone can see where they are without actually having to ask everybody or expect other people to keep track like you would in Jira. So the backlog of work is only the backlog of work. It's not the backlog of plans. So right now, trying to trying to deploy the latest version of that by trying to get some of these pieces up and running. So once the development is in a good place from a testing perspective, then I can focus on the next pieces, which is so the latest version includes estimations, etc. Able to run the Pulumi pipelines locally. No, Pulumi requires the site, right? So Pulumi links to their site. So, but it is deploying. This is a local Kubernetes cluster that this is deploying to. So yeah, but you have to be logged into Pulumi to use Pulumi. That's the downside. You can't run it all. Yeah. So learning a lot. This is not something. Yeah, you can also storage locally, but you still need to be logged into Pulumi, right? It still needs to configure up in their profiles and stuff. Um, oh, nice. Okay, I will. I'll be honest, I did not chase that. I understood it to be a necessity. I didn't figure out how, but I did not chase very long down that path because it didn't really bother me very much. Um, being able to define it. I mean, I'm using TypeScript for the definition. When you run, it's all on your machine. The cloud is just staying secret. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I like it. I'm not. I definitely would consider Pulumi. Um, I, I like the concepts. Um, it's definitely something that I would like to dig more into. But again, when you're developing a system like this, there's a lot of moving parts, right? You know, Mr. Anhorn, for well, just what it takes to build something. Uh, yeah, yeah. So what I'm trying to figure out right this second is why dog. No, really, Apex. Thank you very much for joining today. Take care. Have a great day at work. Um, I like testing my pipelines locally. Yeah. No, people moving around today. It's going to be a tough work day. So thank you. Take care. Have a great rest of your day. Um, so this is not creating the container image. Why is this not creating the container image? I know why it's not creating a container image. Because I bet you I'm missing a piece. They haven't removed this yet, have they? This requirement. Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? Where are you? View receivers. Edit. No. There you go. That's why. Good news is it will probably change that behavior now. Publishing single container. There you go. So enable SDK container support needs to be in your CS proj file. And I bet you that has built something now. There you go. Subscriptions receivers. Not waste 240 meg of space. So that is what was missing. I don't see any AI in your IDE. I use Copilot sparingly in there. I use Claude to ask questions of, but I'm not. Everything is not. I do not use a lot of chat. I do not use a lot of Copilot chat. I use Copilot to suggest things in the code, but even that gets turned off when it gets frustrating. I'm not heavily driven AI development flow. Enable container for subscriptions receivers. Good news is that'll trigger a thing. My entire sidebar here is AI. Yeah. I think you don't like the 6 lines of JavaScript in your C. um, I don't know. It hasn't become part of my workflow. Um, I suppose decades of developing without AI to then have the AI dropped in there doesn't necessarily break my normal routines and practices, right? So it's an exercise in balance for me, figuring out when do I want to use it, how do I want to use it, is it useful for what I'm doing? Yeah. So we should. Here we go. Push image. There we go. So pushing the image to Docker Hub, which should be there now. And there we go. We have a build. So we wrote 154 tests and gave it to the AI and had it code for 20 hours to try and pass the test. And it kept hard coding the test into the business logic. So I finally gave up. That too slow for you, Miss Ranhorn? 1:13. But we do have, yep, confirmed. There is a version deployed. And it does deploy that number as well. So it does do the build number there. So we have 2 and latest are both pushed. So we have the older versions tracked to the actual workflow. Remember, I've been building desktop apps 10 minutes per platform. Yeah, I can imagine that's painful. Yeah, AI working for it to do things like that. Interesting challenge. Do you populate your DB with PG data for fast DB startups? Not sure what that means. Time to go learn. Oh, Postgre. Okay. So database startups don't. I mean, right now I'm using SQL Server, not Postgre. There's a lot of SQL servers, right? So the system is distributed. There is no. These are not one table in a single database or one set of tables in a single database. These are all individual databases that are used. So the speed of startup doesn't necessarily concern me. These are very write heavy, and they always will be. The reads are only off a primary index. Not primary key. They're the index keys though, because they're using the GUIDs that are passed around. This is read heavy. This one would matter a little bit more for startup speed. Yeah. When you're asking if you run your population migration, whatever stuff when the container starts and when you build an image, this worth testing against the DB container locally. Oh, I haven't done much container testing locally. I don't do a lot of. I haven't focused energies on too much integration test level stuff. I do have some in some of the side libraries for this. There are 2. Tests. Yeah, there are tests. I am building unit tests. There is a suite of unit tests for Liquid Sky. There are some integration tests and unit tests on one of the other projects. Where are you? Mediator Outbots. So one of the libraries I developed part of this that is open source is Mediator Outbots. That has a dead letter queue. The only real way of testing that is to create some level of integration test. But that doesn't require much setup data because it is creating the data it needs as part of the workflow. Again, I haven't done a lot of integration testing and definitely not done a lot of container tests over the years. But this one does have the ability. This has a actual database, and it validates that the message gets moved to the dead letter queue when it happens. Yeah, I'm not making the left hand side look like the right hand side. Been doing this for yeah. So anyway, yeah, there are projects that do use some container fixtures. That is that. Okay, so not really the greatest of forward progress, but what this means now is I can set up the Pulumi piece for that image, right? I can now go and configure subscriptions receivers from Pulumi, And at that point, I'm almost ready to push this latest version. What are you shooting? Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. So the latest version looks very different. And then once we're in test, so that version will be available for people. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have that in place. Um, and then people will be able to test that application and give that a go. But that being said, we're not quite at that phase yet. It would be good to even dream about that. But this application, as I was saying at the beginning of the stream, this was not built to, when I first started, this was built as a, can I do this? Can I build it the way I want to build it? And I've evolved that to make sure that I'm staying focused by saying, by focusing on the idea of it really becoming a product, pushing it out there as a real product will keep me focused on it, not just being a toy, that I'm just playing with here and there. Um, so anyway, unfortunately, this does not pay the bills. I do not earn enough off streaming to live off. So, um, Napalm, good morning, goodbye. Um, I will be back tomorrow. We'll be doing more of this. Hopefully, I'll actually have more progress made later on today. That all depends on many things. But if you're interested in chatting more about this, you have any further questions, the Discord is always open. You're more than welcome to post thoughts, opinions, questions in Discord. Sometimes we get together in the voice chat if you're like hanging out and talking. Warning, that can be very random. um, and but yeah, I'll be doing more of this tomorrow, trying to get this over the line, and hopefully, very hopefully, this week we will have a deployed version of the last 4 months worth of development working, where we can do estimations, we can do tasking properly, we can assign tasks to people, we can see the inklings of the idea of initiatives, etc. So yeah, that will be tomorrow. Okay. Anna is the only one streaming .NET development. So Anna it is. Anna is a .NET developer, very talented .NET developer, working on many projects right now. A web platform, building her own Markdown tool. So this is a fascinating watch. So I will return tomorrow. We will raid over there. Don't forget, you've not followed him. OneLion is another .NET developer, a very talented .NET developer who works in Blazor and shows his work projects. Also has an awesome community day stream on Fridays that I would highly recommend checking out. But no, thank you, OneLion. Nest, thank you very much for the follow. I appreciate it. Hope to see you again soon. So let's go raid Anna. I will return tomorrow. Thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day. If I don't see you around Twitch, and I'll see you soon. Bye all.